At Parker, our purpose is simple. We want to make the world a better place by working more efficiently, by using more sustainable practices, by developing better technologies. We keep moving forward. With each new idea, innovation, and partnership, we're one step closer to fulfilling our purpose every single day. To find out more, visit parker.com/purpose. Parker, engineering your success.
There are days when we just have to grieve. We have to listen to our bodies once again, that, there may be so much grief around how we feel about our bodies that, we may need to take a nap. We may need to just be extra gentle with ourselves on those days.
Hey, Love Food listener, Julie Duffy Dillon here. I'm preparing season 4 of the Love Food podcast. And in the meantime, I'm rebroadcasting the PCOS and Food Peace podcast. Kimmie Singh and I interviewed people navigating their food peace journey while affected by a chronic condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. Do you not experience this, yet experience diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, or another condition and don't want to diet? Or are you feeling shame every time you leave the doctor's office or avoid them altogether because of the weight talk? Or are you looking for more body-liberating resources? Well, then we made this podcast just for you. Pencil me in for Tuesday, September 17th, when season 4 of a Love Food podcast begins. And now, the PCOS and Food Peace podcast. Take care.
Chapter 6, Chevese Turner on mental health, grief, and loss.
Hi, and welcome to the PCOS and Food Peace podcast. I am Julie Duffy Dillon.
And I'm Kimmie Singh. We're so glad that you're here with us today. We put this show together with you in mind, and we hope that it brings you the companionship that you're looking for as you navigate your PCOS journey.
Kimmie and I have worked hard to put this show together, and we want to shine a light on voices often not heard in PCOS circles. You'll hear from Jess Baker, Ivy Felicia, Danny Adriana, Sophie Carter-Kahn, and many others. Every interviewee was asked a series of questions about their PCOS journey. This episode features Chevese Turner. She's the founder and CEO of the Binge Eating Disorder Association. We will start today's episode, how we start every chapter of the PCOS and Food Peace podcast, with a listener question. We gather these questions on Instagram, through our Facebook community, and also email newsletter.
Today's question comes from Instagram. You can find us on Instagram at Food Peace Dietitian and at Tasting Abundance. Katie asked us this question. My question is, how do you find PCOS healthcare providers that align with health at every size and have a non-diet approach? I was diagnosed while in college with a gynecologist and then a reproductive endocrinologist in my hometown. 5 years later, now that I'm living in a different state, I haven't been able to find any doctors in 4 years. I have no idea how to find someone who would be helpful and not hurtful. I've done a lot of mental and physical healing by being on my own and listening to my body in the last few years, but I don't want anyone to damage that. Thanks, Katie.
Oh, good question, Katie. I feel like it's a really big theme that we've heard in our interviews, Kimmie, is like people talking about avoiding doctors for years and years because of fear and shame. And some people talked about finding doctors that aligned with a non-diet approach, and other people said they found kind of good enough doctors. They talked about that. They're like, I just found someone that I was able to do what I needed to do. But what are your thoughts on this, Kimmie?
Oh gosh, I have so many thoughts on it. Well, I mean, ideally, right, you would find a great health at every size doctor who would never put you on a diet, and that would be great for probably your PCOS and your mental health. And I would love that to happen for you, but it may not be the case. And if that's not the case, you can still find some doctors that are not as fat phobic and that won't necessarily be very forceful with a diet. So there are still options out there, even though they may not be perfect. And it's kind of, you have to find a balance of what works for you. I feel like another great option is that if you have maybe a dietitian that you work with in your town or virtually, it may be really helpful to have at least one person on your team that's completely health at every size. I would find that to be really important. But above all, you mentioned a great point that you've done all this hard work and you don't want anybody to damage that. But Katie and our other listeners, I think you're a lot stronger than you realize, and all of that hard work won't be reversed by a bad doctor's visit.
Right. Yeah, I did to always have hope that there's going to be more answers, there's going to be direction for you. And I love this like centering on like if you can find one person to be your ally and support you in the way that you need the support, that you can make the rest work. I just think that sounds so much more doable, especially for those of us who live in these really small towns and there's just not a lot of access to care. But maybe you have a virtual therapist or dietitian who does align with a non-diet or health at every size approach. Like then you can still get what you need. And yeah, maybe it's not perfect, but it's going to be good enough, And something that I wanted to share with listeners too, there's a couple places to look online for listing for doctors. And Laura Burns, she talked about the Fat Friendly Docs page. There's a like an online page where you can find doctors that will say that they're fat friendly. And what she found with hers is she found hers on there, but the person wasn't like 100% haze, but was kind of like what we were talking about too, is like she felt safe enough with this person. And that's why they were on there, because they were just someone that listened. And really, that's what I feel like, as long as someone's going to listen to you, that's all we're asking for. And then another one too is the health at every size community.org. I think it actually uses HAES community.org. That's another place that has lots of different providers, not just doctors, that may provide a resource. And then the other one is size diversity and health.org. That's another one that may have a listing. And the other thing is if you do have access to a dietitian, therapist, or exercise professional, or anyone who aligns in a non-diet way, they probably are also a wealth of information for other providers. So asking them too, like, do you recommend any doctors to help me with this? And that may be another way to get it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm excited to talk to Chevese. We're actually not going to talk to Chevese. I think that's really funny. I said that. I'm excited to let the listeners hear the interview with Chevese because she talks a lot about this experience of coming up against physicians who weren't supporting her and finding her own way. And we get to hear the interview in just a moment. But first, we're going to pause for a brief commercial break.
At Parker, our purpose is simple. We want to make the world a better place by working more efficiently, by using more sustainable practices, by developing better technologies. We keep moving forward. With each new idea, innovation, and partnership, we're one step closer to fulfilling our purpose every single day. To find out more, visit parker.com/purpose. Parker, engineering your success.
This rebroadcast of the PCOS and Food Peace podcast is brought to you by my PCOS and Food Peace courses. If you're experiencing PCOS, I know at some point you were told you have to diet in order to promote health. Like forever. So what do you do when you've tried every diet and it hasn't worked? What do you do if you know diets don't work for most people? So why would they work when you have PCOS? I have a course just for you. I have a 12-step system that I take people through who are wanting to move away from diets, heal their relationship with food, do intuitive eating work, and promote health at the same time. Yeah, it's possible. If you want to look at all the details, go to PCOSandFoodPeace.com. And keep in mind that I have a 25% off coupon that when you're in the checkout area, just put in the coupon code podcast and you'll get 25% off. So I look forward to seeing you within the course. And if you're a dietitian who helps people with PCOS, which So many people are affected by this condition. So I have a feeling if you're a dietitian, you are working with people with PCOS. And if you're a dietitian who is HAES informed or uses only non-diet approaches, if you don't, well, look into them because they're a really important part of the PCOS healing experience. And if you want some more tools to help those clients with PCOS, go to the course I designed just for you. It has 20 continuing education units through CDR, and you can get to all the details at PCOSandfoodpeace.com/dietitians. This rebroadcast is also brought to you by Kimmie Singh's work at tastingabundance.com. So Kimmie Singh, when she recorded this podcast with me, was finishing up her master's degree in nutrition and starting her dietetic internship. And she is all done. She is a dietitian now and seeing clients. If you would like to know more about her work, she does speaking nationally and she also works with clients individually. If you'd like to know more about her work, go to tastingabundance.com. All right, enough of all that. Let's get back to the show. Kimmie and I are thrilled to share our interview with Jess Baker. She's a positive, progressive, and magnificently irreverent force to be reckoned with in the realm of self-love, advocacy, and mental health. She believes in the importance of body autonomy, hard conversations, strong coffee, and even stronger language. She does all of these in our interview, and we loved it. After creating satirical versions of Abercrombie & Fitch advertisements in 2013, she appeared on The Today Show and quickly became one of the leading voices in the current body image movement. That's why it was so important to include Jess Baker in the PCOS and Food Peace podcast. When not writing, Jess spends her time speaking around the world, working with plus-size clothing companies, organizing body liberation events, taking pictures in her underwear, and attempting to convince her cats that they liked to wear bow ties. Learn more about Jess at themilitantbaker.com. The interview with Jess is coming up next, following this brief commercial break. This PCOS and Food Peace podcast is being brought to you by Theralogics, the makers of Ovasitol, an inositol supplement with a blend of myo-inositol and D-chiro-inositol in the body's optimal ratio of 40:1. Inositols are nutrients that help to decrease insulin resistance, promote menstrual regularity, restore ovulation, and balance hormone levels. In convenient powder form, Ovasitol can be enjoyed in your favorite beverage or smoothie. Available in both a canister and convenient single-serving packets, Ovasitol contains 100% pure inositols with no additives. It also is the only inositol supplement that I recommend to my clients with PCOS because it does have that very important 40:1 ratio and is third-party tested. Order online today at Theralogics.com. That's THERALOGIX.com. And during checkout, be sure to use my PRC code 127410, and you will get an exclusive PCOS and Food Peace podcast discount. Also, be sure to listen to the end of this episode where we will give you the opportunity to win a free 90-day supplies of Ovasitol. So go to Theralogics.com and use the PRC code 127410. Hi, Chevese.
Hi.
So tell me how you figured out you have PCOS.
Well, I discovered that I had PCOS in what was the dark ages of the beginning of the internet. And so I was in my late 20s and I was just beginning a serious relationship with the person who is now my husband. And I had finished college rather late in my 20s and, was going through the usual things that people who are beginning to really adult are doing. And I decided, well, I need to get a good physical. And, I had started another round of therapy. I still wasn't quite realizing what was going on in terms of having an eating disorder, which I'm sure we'll talk about more as well. But I I had started reading things on the internet that were specific to different symptoms that I was having. And one of the symptoms, which is something that I think so many people with PCOS begin with, is hair in places where they don't want it to be. And for me, it was specifically on my neck. And so I was Googling about that, and it led me down this rabbit hole to places that I could really relate to, and all of these symptoms coming together and it having a name. And I, from the time that I started having my periods, they were always very irregular. Gynecologists would never have any answer for why that was happening. They just put me on birth control and, sort of the usual methods of, quote unquote, treating that. And so I went to an endocrinologist, and she told me that she thought that this combination of symptoms was probably something called polycystic ovary syndrome. And she explained a little bit about what that is. And so I kept Googling and, or at that time, I don't know what it was. It wasn't Googling, but researching, and eventually went to another endocrinologist who said to me, I don't think this is PCOS. This is just a metabolic syndrome type thing. And, sort of dismissed it, but put me on metformin, and that did help. My periods began to regulate a little bit better. And so it took a couple more years from that point for me to get an actual diagnosis and have a sonogram confirming PCOS, and, being taken seriously that this is really something that was affecting me and my health. I also, my boyfriend became my husband, and, we were talking about having children. And I was worried about that, considering that my periods were not regular. And so I went to an infertility specialist before we even tried, really. And he said to me, well, before I can even consider treating you, I'm going to need you to lose 50 pounds. And I was already in therapy at this point for my eating disorder. And while I was not against losing 50 pounds at that point in my life, I was upset that he thought this was the only way that I could get pregnant. So I started researching more online, found another fertility doctor, did one round of Clomid, and was pregnant. And so the weight issue was not something that stood in my way of having a child, but it definitely, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, it definitely played a role in so many aspects of the treatment that I got through the years. So in a nutshell, that's how I came to discover I had PCOS, and the process of getting to the point where I had a child, and the fertility part of the issue.
Mm-hmm. Something that you mentioned that I've heard from other people is that sometimes what doctors would say, oh, yeah, you have it. And then another doctor would say, no, you don't. And you kind of got passed back and forth and told different things. Did you experience a time where you were like, yeah, maybe I don't have it? I don't know, like kind of a confusion with the diagnosis in general, or did you feel pretty firm that that's what it was?
I think that the one physician who told me that I did not have it and kind of blew me off, the endocrinologist, I just walked away saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. Because I had done so much of my own research, to the extent that I even had corresponded with several researchers who researched PCOS and asked them questions and so forth. And that's just how I am. But, when I saw all of when I saw the bigger picture for PCOS and what it could mean for my health, I just felt like I really needed to know, and I needed to know as much as possible. And even if physicians were not on board, I knew because I lived in my body, obviously. And, a 15 minutes with an endocrinologist who dismissed it, just, I wasn't going to believe that.
I can relate. And I think like it's been a very common theme for all the people we've spoken to, that just having to take it into your own hands. And like you said, it was the earlier times for the internet must have been a lot harder.
I think it probably was, but there was just enough information for me to kind of take it and run and say, this is what's going on. And I also was looking at the people in my family and their health histories, and both my mother and my grandmother were diagnosed with diabetes at a very early age with type 2 in their early 20s. They, it just, to me, it made sense that this was something that I was born with, and it was going to present at the time when I started to menstruate and go into my adult years. And, I don't know if there truly is a link there. That's for science to figure out, but it just sort of made sense to me that this problem that is at its core an insulin resistance issue, and having a very just, having family members, mother and grandmother, who presented very early with diabetes, which abnormally early, sort of made sense to me. So I'll never know if there is a true connection, but
yeah, of course. And there's just so much we don't know.
Yeah.
Well, like I know you spoke a bit about your relationship with healthcare professionals around your PCOS diagnosis. Since then, how has your PCOS treatment been in relation to their behavior?
It's continually dismissed. I do have a very good relationship with my primary care physician. I've had to train her on eating disorder information, and in terms of PCOS, I've also had to continually remind her. And as I said, she's, I feel like we have a really great relationship, and she's very attentive to everything that I tell her about. She doesn't weight shame. She doesn't weigh me. It's really the perfect situation if you're going to have a relationship with a physician. But I do have I have health considerations that require that I see specialists. And in each one of those situations, they hear me that I have PCOS, and they will acknowledge that it may play a part in the health consideration, but they are very quick to put the blame back onto me. That, well, if you just lost X number of pounds, then you would not have to deal with this. It always comes back to, well, if you just lost weight, then this wouldn't be a health consideration. And so I find that disheartening.
Yeah, I think it's such a cop-out on their end, just not being able to provide care, provide treatment options, and reverting back to the weight loss.
Yes, exactly.
So sad. Something that I'm connecting with what you said, that my heart's hurting because of it. It just, that he said you were continually dismissed. Like it's an ongoing, continual experience. That's just, that hurts. That stinks, because it means that you're not being heard or seen, or really, they're not gathering the information that they need to help you to like decide your next best steps. And, getting their education to help you, to feel better.
Exactly. Right. So. And, and I have pointed out to them that, I do not diet any longer. I don't restrict. And I've been at the same weight for many years now, but I was like Olympic level dieter, back in the day. And so I have lost a lot of weight and regained it over and over and over again. And when I lost weight, none of the symptoms subsided. The same stuff was still there. And so, when I point that out to them, they just, blow it off and don't seem to acknowledge it as well. They just are so married to their weight loss paradigm as a a treatment for this.
Yeah. Well, switching gears a little bit, when you were diagnosed, or even now, how did you and how do you tell your loved ones about PCOS?
Well, my husband is the person that I've probably shared the most with. I tell him everything about it. And so, he has a very good understanding. Much like anything in life, you gauge how much you can tell certain people by the way that they respond to things over time. And so, there are certain people in my life that I know just they can't take it in. It would take months of explaining every day what this means. And it just really isn't helpful. And then there are other people, my mother, my best friend, and, some other friends that I share it with. And I also share it professionally quite a bit. And that is very rewarding because I've seen just how many people can relate. But the reason that I share it with people is that, one, I want empathy. Two, I want them to be an advocate for me if that time would come about. And so I want them to understand it. And three, I want to be able to explain that, the things that come with PCOS, like depression or just not feeling right in my body, the various pains that we may have at different times. I want them to understand why. And so I find that most people are actually very curious about it and find it interesting, the ones that I, let in on what's going on.
Yeah. Well, for somebody listening, maybe that's like a new diagnosee. That's the word. What advice would you give them about sharing their PCOS experience, either personally or professional?
I think that the advice I would give is to trust yourself in terms of how much energy you have to help a person understand. Look at how you're feeling about it, and if there's any shame connected to it, and possibly find someone to process that shame with, because unfortunately, I think with any health issue these days, we're made to feel like somehow we are responsible for that health issue, and the term healthism has become much more common and understood, and so I think that in the effort to save insurers money, the government money, and so forth, the blame has been put back onto individuals, and PCOS is one of those places where we can feel a lot of shame because it's very complex and intersectional with many other health issues, I believe. And so I think that those are the important things to look at, and to know who you can trust, who's not going to shame you, to help them understand, what you're going through, so that they can be there for you when you need them.
Yeah, that's really great. advice. I feel like shame is such a big part of the PCOS experience. So however one can find a path that distances a person from the shame is
Right.
gotta be not only like a kind choice, but also, I'm thinking from a dietitian perspective, I suppose, like a choice that's going to promote health, so,
Right.
and easier to like make choices that are for you, gonna help you feel more energized and be able to manage things like PCOS and stuff. So
Yes.
something else that's often loaded with shame is a person's relationship with food when they are affected by PCOS. And what have you kind of put together on how PCOS has affected your relationship with food?
Yeah, and I'll preface this by saying it is ongoing for me and complicated by the fact that I had an eating disorder for the majority of my life. And whether the two are connected or not, I suppose I'll never know, but they definitely intersect. And so the shame of one really builds on the shame of the other, and it's a perfect negative marriage.
Mm.
So my relationship with food has been disordered and complicated and difficult for so long. But in some ways, I look at the fact that I had an eating disorder as somewhat of a positive in helping me navigate the aspects of PCOS, in that I learned to not demonize any foods. I've learned to listen to my body when it comes to the foods that I'm eating. For instance, there was a day when I could sit and eat a lot of chocolate. And now through learning intuitive eating and just being more connected to my body, I know that after eating just a little bit of chocolate, I actually don't feel very well. But I would eat past that because of various reasons. But that has really helped with my PCOS because, food really does affect how I feel. And when I can feel that without judgment and, make a shift, not demonize it, not put shame around it, then I can just move on to what I need to feel myself and feel good. There's a little bit of grief and loss, I think, that comes along with intuitive eating as a whole. In that, at first, when you're really paying attention, you grieve a little bit that you're not going to be able to eat all of that chocolate because you don't feel good. And it has nothing to do with guilt about eating the chocolate, or you just know you don't feel good.
Mm.
But you move on to being sort of very grateful because you are eating things you like and you want and feel good in your body, and that includes just about everything. It's just your body's telling you kind of when to start and stop.
Something I'm wondering, especially a listener right now who can totally relate to feeling the shame around food and maybe eating certain foods or certain amounts. I'm wondering how you made that step to be curious and non-judgmental, or, trying to do that in order to gather that information, to gather that intel and like, oh, when I eat this amount of chocolate, I start to feel ill,
Yeah.
How did you get to that place where you're able to do that kind of work?
Honestly, it took quite a bit of time. But I think whenever you're introduced to a concept, as I was with intuitive eating, it was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do now, and you set out, because we're taught that, especially around food and eating, that when you're going to work a quote unquote program or a type of eating or a diet, that it's very, there are boundaries around it, and all you have to do is ABC 1, 2, 3. And because I came out of diet culture. That's how I approached intuitive eating at the beginning. And in reality, it took some time. It took a lot of experimenting. It took not doing it in a way that it was meant to be done. It took eating past my intuitive signals. But over time, it just became more and more apparent. My body and my brain had to start to connect, and those connections take a long time. But I think that the most important piece was being able to sit with being uncomfortable about not doing it in the way that I wanted to do it when that happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally does.
Yeah. And, you know, having those feelings of failure come up and be okay with that and be able to talk about it with my therapist, which was very helpful for me. Talk about it with the people I did trust. And I'm fortunate that I'm in a profession where I'm surrounded by people who know a lot about this. And so I could talk to them about it and hear other experiences. But it really is about being able to sit with that discomfort and know and say, okay, I'm going to keep going on this path, but it's going to continue to take some time. I do think having people that we can talk with is extremely important. I do think that doing the things for yourself that are gentle, and if that means taking a walk for you, that's what it means. If it means being with your dog and just hanging out, that's fine too. Most of us have busy lives where we can't just do that all day, but it's just taking it easy and allowing that to kind of flow through us and hopefully on and out into another space.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's almost comparable to the way diet culture pushes this idea of eating healthy and whatnot. Sometimes I feel like when we're discussing self-care, it seems like there are people trying to just mask everything with saying, yeah, just take your walks, use your essential oils and whatever else. And don't get me wrong, I love a good lavender oil, but
Yeah.
there's room for other stuff too and other emotions.
Right. And it depends where you are. I mean, what I did for self-care 10 years ago is very different than what I do for self-care now. So, it's about not criticizing that and doing what at the moment you feel is going to be most helpful to you. And it's different for each of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great tips. And what do you wish medical professionals knew about PCOS?
I wish they understood just how it affects your mental health, and I think this is with any chronic disease or disorder, or as in PCOS syndrome, that it's exhausting. It's extremely tiring. It is mentally taxing. It can be physically taxing. And, all that we want as patients really, I believe, is to be heard. We don't want to be blamed and shamed. And we just want good care. We want you to hear us and to not dismiss it and to understand that this is complicated for us and we live with it. We live this out on a daily basis. There's all kinds of challenges to the way our medical system works and why that is difficult for individual physicians and the medical community as a whole. But I think if each one just came to it with a little bit of empathy, that would go a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Empathy doesn't take any extra time,
Right.
And I am trying to imagine how your life would be different if in your 20s, when you were trying to figure out what was going on and you'd found this PCOS diagnosis on the internet. Like, what if those docs were just listening more, or providing that empathy? I wonder how things would be different. I think it has the ability to be a lot different, and that doesn't necessarily mean they need to have these extra tools or anything, but just really, just some minor empathy tools, like listening, active listening.
Right. And believing you when you say,
believing you. Yes.
I have these host of issues, and not just dismissing it. Yeah.
So, what is the best and worst PCOS advice that you were given?
Honestly, I feel like I haven't gotten a lot of advice especially from the medical community. I think the worst was and is just lose weight and everything will be fine. Probably the best, and I don't even think it's that great, has just been my primary care physician saying, let's just make sure we get all of the specialists on board that we need to have these different parts of your body checked out on a regular basis, and make sure that the medications are right. And she does kind of hold the center very well for me. But outside of that, I think that the advice, a lot of what I've learned, actually, interestingly enough, has come from my massage therapist, who is a Health at Every Size provider, and she very much is about holistic health, not in sort of the alternative health type of approach, but just in looking at the whole body, and just talking with her, and she can relate to much of this herself, and having those conversations have been extremely helpful. So I do think there are complementary providers that can be helpful in getting to a place where you can be comfortable in your body with this set of symptoms. But that can be a landmine as well, because so many alternative or complementary clinicians tend to focus on weight loss as well.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. So there's a risk of, taking those steps, but when they're found, especially a HAES massage therapist, that's amazing.
I know. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Especially in my part of the world.
Totally. Because they're working on your body.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Because they're touching your body, and to be able to have compassion and dignity, I wish that was how every massage therapist was.
I know. It's very, very unique, and I feel very fortunate.
Yeah. Because I picture how, for so many people going to massage therapists, and if they're living at a higher weight, how diet advice during that time of relaxation would just come out. I can picture it happening all the time. So
and I've had those experiences, and and it just when I found Amelia, it was just made a huge difference. So
thanks, Amelia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you've described some tools that you use to help your mental and physical wellness with PCOS. Do you want to share any others that you'd recommend to someone listening who's trying to find some new tools that help them?
It is so individual. And I think that really just beginning to reach out to people in the PCOS community that you feel like you can relate to. Some of the tools that you have to have, unfortunately, are tools that are the warning signs in your head that you may not be getting good information. So anyone that tells you that losing weight is what is going to, quote unquote, cure or make the disorder basically not an issue is not well informed. But I do think that finding some groups and finding people like like you, Julia, a dietitian who understands PCOS and is hopefully health at every size, which is also difficult. But having a clinician who really understands this is really the best tool you can have in your pocket. If you don't have that, finding groups online, finding resources from I know there are several PCOS organizations, but again, being discriminating. If what they're suggesting is a weight loss for that is going to be the end all, then that's probably not the best advice, and you may want to look elsewhere.
Is there anything that you learned about PCOS that surprised you?
I think I had done so much research and just really learned to pay so much attention in my own body with the set of symptoms. I think initially, years ago, when I discovered that this was, at its core, an insulin resistance problem that affected, it was a metabolic issue, it was a hormone issue and so forth, I was very surprised because I went into it looking at it as a fertility problem. And that was really the piece of it that I focused on for the longest time. And then as things evolved and I realized that just how all of this worked together, it may affect the shape of my body. It may affect my liver and my heart and, all these different things. I was just amazed at how much of my body it could affect. And that I was probably going to have to be more diligent about my health in terms of seeking medical care than the average person.
Yeah.
So, and just how complicated it was very surprising at the onset.
That's something that surprised me too. And I think a major disservice against the PCOS community is that doctors are not talking about how complex PCOS is. And I'm not sure, maybe if you saw it last year, I think out of Australia, or maybe New Zealand, I'm not sure, but there was an article published and there was an assertion that it's best to not even tell people with PCOS that they have it unless they want to conceive, suggesting that they don't really need to know. It might be too stressful. And if you want to, or if any listeners want to see my rebuttal, if you want to call it that, they can find it on Julie's blog.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes for them too. Yes.
There's so many reasons that is awful advice. I think it also plays to the fact that the medical community thinks that people can't handle their own health, that they need to be told what to do, and that's dangerous. I mean, this is partly about autonomy and making decisions for yourself around health. And yes, it can be stressful knowing this. I completely agree, but it also can be stressful not knowing that this is something that's playing out in your body and just thinking you're falling apart. It also gives you information to take the steps that you need to do to, address your wellness.
Yeah, one of the things that I feel really privileged to have experienced is sitting with people as they go through the diagnosis of, or getting the diagnosis of PCOS. And maybe they were sitting with me and talking about their relationship with food and experiencing mood disorder and really intense cravings, or, there's lots of other PCOS things, and being like, it kind of sounds like you have this condition. And then when they go to the doc and get the diagnosis, that this relief of like, oh, so I'm not, it's not that I'm doing anything wrong. This thing is in my hypothalamus, like causing havoc. And wow, that's such a, it's such an important part of, I feel like, having that information for people then, to feel like they can make choices that help their body feel like body liberation, I guess, in a sense. Like it's a choice that's helping them to just know what's going on. And when Kimmie and I saw that article, to say we were pissed is really putting it mildly.
Yeah.
We were like,
Yeah, I
oh
mean,
my gosh.
because I think they were even saying something like, oh, well, when you tell them they look online for answers, they get the wrong answers. But I mean, we're looking online because we're not getting answers from anyone.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That it is infuriating. And people want to know, why is this happening? Why are these things
Mhm.
happening to me?
Mhm.
And knowing the sort of, what is happening in the body that is causing these symptoms is really helpful.
Mhm.
And I think most humans are curious about this type of thing and are not going to freak out. They want to know, and then they can take action if necessary,
Mhm.
or they can learn to sit with it, which is another big important piece.
Right. Yes. So, Chevese, if you could go back to the Chevese in her 20s, who's just like trying to figure out what's going on and is doing all that internet research and maybe just getting that diagnosis, what do you wish you could tell that person?
I think that's, that's hard, because I feel privileged around this piece, because I guess then that I would tell her that it really is going to be okay, that having found this information really led to a whole world opening up, including getting better care for my eating disorder,
Mm.
and that you're going to manage it, and you're going to, this year I turned 50, and you're going to sit at 50, and you're going to say, you know what, considering all this crap, that I've been through with my body and mental health and so forth, and PCOS, things look pretty good.
Mhm.
And so I feel very fortunate and privileged in that I learned to advocate for myself. It's still difficult, but I did learn to advocate for myself, and I have gotten very good health care, considering that it's had to be patched together and I've had to insist on it. Um, and I can't say that without acknowledging that I am extremely unique in that, because all of the individuals out there who don't have the privileges that I have, and especially those in oppressed communities, things are going to look very, very different. And that is something that has, become part of my life's work, to talk about health disparities and oppressed communities, and what that means for them, and try to work toward a better healthcare system for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Well, Chevese Turner, thank you so much for your time and telling us about your lived experience. This is really great information, and I know the listeners are going to really appreciate hearing about your experiences and your advice as well. And if they're wanting to know more about your work, or want to find out more about you, where's the best way for them to do that?
They can go to the organization that I founded and run, which is the Binge Eating Disorder Association, and the website for that is bedaonline.com. So it's BEDA online.com. I also have a website that will be up and running. It's up, but it's not fully fleshed out yet, but bedrecovery.com. And that is a new book on binge eating disorder that I've just written with a clinician, and there'll be information there about how to get a hold of me.
Awesome.
So I'm happy to speak with anyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll put all the links to that and the links to your book as well in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this rebroadcast of the PCOS and Food Peace podcast. It was created by Julie Duffy Dillon and Kimmie Singh. Audio engineer is Toby Lyles from 24 Sound. Show art by Katie Sanders from Pop and Gray. Music by Tiny Music and titled Super Pop. We are grateful that you listen to our show, and if you'd like more information about Julie's work, go to juliedillonrd.com, and Kimmie's work, go to tastingabundance.com. Thank you for listening to the show, and we hope it gave you more opportunities to experience food peace.